In recent developments, questions have emerged about whether Donald Trump is exploiting nonprofit organizations to bypass government transparency laws, potentially violating regulations related to disclosure and public records. Specifically, concerns have been raised about Stephen Miller's organization, America First Legal, and its activities targeting sanctuary city mayors with legal threats. These actions raise legal and ethical questions about whether such organizations are acting as quasi-governmental agencies and should, therefore, be subject to public records laws like the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. Stephen Miller, a former senior advisor to Donald Trump and a key architect of his immigration policies, runs America First Legal, which is technically classified as a nonprofit organization. Recently, Miller sent letters to various cities, including San Diego, labeling them as sanctuary cities and threatening legal action if they do not comply with certain immigration policies. Given Miller's ties to Trump and the likelihood of assuming an official position in a potential future administration, critics argued that America First Legal may be operating as an extension of Trump's political agenda rather than as a genuinely independent nonprofit. This raises an important legal concept: quasi-governmental agencies. When private organizations are so intertwined with government functions and responsibilities, they may effectively operate as extensions of the government. In such cases, they could become subject to constitutional limits, transparency obligations, and laws like FOIA. Normally, FOIA applies to government agencies, not private entities, but when an organization operates in a manner that mirrors or supports governmental actions, the lines can blur. This raises questions about whether nonprofits like America First Legal should be required to disclose their communications and activities if they are effectively acting as proxies for government officials. The issue becomes more complicated given America First Legal's recent activities. By threatening sanctuary city mayors, the organization appears to be performing functions that might otherwise fall under government jurisdiction. Critics argue that this creates a loophole, allowing Trump and his allies to enforce political agendas without being subject to transparency laws. If these organizations are deemed to be quasi-governmental actors, they could face legal challenges demanding access to their records through FOIA requests. However, such requests would likely be contested, leading to litigation that could set important precedents for defining the boundaries between private and public entities. This situation also echoes previous legal battles concerning public records laws and government transparency. For example, courts have ruled in cases involving public officials using private platforms for official communications. In one case, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's private Twitter account was deemed to be operating as a public platform, making it subject to transparency rules. Similar principles could apply to organizations acting on behalf of government officials, especially when their activities influence public policy. Transparency advocates argue that allowing private organizations to operate as shadow extensions of the government without accountability undermines democratic principles. If America First Legal and similar entities are being used to implement policies and intimidate political opponents, they should be held to the same standards as government agencies. Legal experts emphasize that sunshine laws, which promote openness in government, are essential to prevent abuse of power and ensure accountability. Another dimension to this issue involves broader concerns about Trump's governance style, which often blurs the lines between public and private sectors. Critics point to Trump's history of using personal businesses, family members, and close allies to execute political strategies, sidestepping traditional government structures. This approach raises alarms about transparency and the erosion of democratic norms. Turning to another pressing issue, Trump's shifting stance on TikTok has also sparked controversy. In 2020, Trump pushed for a ban on TikTok, citing national security concerns due to its ownership by ByteDance, a Chinese company. At the time, the administration argued that TikTok posed a threat to American data privacy and election integrity. However, Trump has since reversed his position, reportedly influenced by major donors with financial interests in ByteDance. This reversal highlights potential conflicts of interest and raises questions about the role of private influence in shaping public policy. Critics argue that Trump's about-face undermines his previous claims about national security and reflects broader concerns about corruption and favoritism in his administration. National security experts and lawmakers, including members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, continue to warn that TikTok could be exploited by the Chinese government for surveillance and propaganda. Despite TikTok's assurances that it maintains a firewall between its American operations and its Chinese parent company, evidence suggests otherwise. Reports indicate that Chinese authorities have accessed TikTok data, fueling fears about foreign influence and data privacy violations. These concerns underscore the need for a consistent and transparent approach to addressing threats posed by foreign-owned technology companies. Critics argue that Trump's shifting stance exemplifies a pattern of prioritizing personal and political interests over national security. The broader implications of these issues point to a troubling trend of private entities being used to advance political agendas without accountability. Whether it's America First Legal acting as an unofficial enforcement arm of Trump's policies or TikTok's ties to foreign governments, these cases highlight the challenges of maintaining transparency and accountability in an increasingly complex political landscape. Legal experts suggest that addressing these challenges requires a multi-pronged approach. First, courts must determine whether organizations like America First Legal qualify as quasi-governmental actors and are, therefore, subject to transparency laws. Second, policymakers must establish clearer guidelines for addressing conflicts of interest and influence peddling in government. Finally, stronger regulations may be needed to protect data privacy and prevent foreign interference through social media platforms. In the meantime, advocacy groups and legal watchdogs are likely to pursue litigation to test these boundaries and push for greater accountability. Cases involving FOIA requests, public records laws, and data privacy protections will be closely watched as potential precedents for addressing the growing influence of private entities in public governance. For now, these issues remain unresolved, but they underscore the importance of vigilance and advocacy in protecting democratic norms and ensuring government accountability. As investigations and legal battles unfold, the public will need to stay informed and engaged to hold leaders and organizations accountable for their actions.